One thing that I learned about teamwork is that I think sometimes it requires some sort of leadership. Like if you look at professional sports, collegiate sports, even high school sports, there's teams that have like coaches and that have like staff to help the team. And I think that's really important because especially for our assignment, we didn't really know each other. And so we were sort of confused about how we would approach the assignment, how we would assign roles. And I think that if we had a leader, that leader would help like guide us, help us to sort of like bring everything together, assign roles for everybody, and that way we could have finished the assignment a lot better and a lot quicker. And another thing that I found out about teamwork is that it requires a lot of communication. And what I mean by communication is that everyone needs to be aware of their roles, and everyone needs to be on the same page so that, we're not scrambling at the end, because I think for our assignment, when we did it the first time, there was a lack of communication, and so we ended up procrastinating, and we had to finish it within like the last day or two, which was bad, because you should probably never do an assignment in one day. Probably not the best idea. And one thing that I would do differently if I were to redo the project is that I would sort of relate it back to what I said about leadership. I think I would probably take charge in like taking leadership and saying, okay, here's what we need to do. I think we should set this deadline. I think you and you should do these roles. I think that we could have done the assignment a lot better if I had taken charge and I had taken leadership. In the starting position, Joy will dorsiflex her right ankle as far as she can until her knees are about 6 centimeters in front of her toes. While in the starting position, Joy will dorsiflex her left ankle as far as she can until her knees are about 8 centimeters in front of her toes. Joy's left knee is valgus in relation to her hip and her foot. Joy's right knee is slightly valgus in relation to her foot and her hip. Joy will passively dorsiflex her right ankle until her knee hits the wall while keeping her knee in line with her foot and her hip. She'll come back and then will passively dorsiflex her right ankle again. Joy will passively dorsiflex her left ankle until her knee hits the wall while keeping her knee aligned with her foot and her hip. She'll bring it back and then dorsiflex her left ankle again until her knee hits the wall. While having a neutral curvature in her lower back, Joy will actively raise her right leg with the marker on her mid-thigh, where she'll then lower her leg, and I will then measure for her ACES, place the marker on her ACES, where she will then actively raise her right leg again. Joy will actively raise her left leg while keeping a neutral curvature in her back. I will then measure for her ACES, and then place the marker on the ACES. Wait for her to actively raise her left leg again. I will passively raise Joy's right leg with the marker on her mid-thigh while she's keeping a neutral curvature in her lower back. I'll bring the leg down and feel for her ACES on her hip, then place the marker on her ACES, and then I will again passively raise her right leg until her ankle is about 3 centimeters from the marker. I will passively raise Joy's left leg while she keeps a neutral curvature in her lower back with the marker on her mid-thigh. I will then lower the leg and then check for her ACES and then place the marker on her ACES. Make sure that it's in the right place. Then passively raise her left leg again. Joy will flex her right shoulder, and that where I will then measure the distance from her C7 to her fist while keeping her shoulder down and back. Joy will actively flex her left shoulder, where I will then find her C7 and then measure the distance from her fist to her C7 while her left shoulder is down and facing the backside. I will passively lower Joy's right fist, where I will then measure the distance from her C7 to her fist while making sure that her shoulder is facing down and back. I will passively lower Joy's left fist and then measure the distance from her C7 to her fist while making sure that her left shoulder is facing down and back. Joy will reach anteriorly 3 times while trying to keep her knee in line with her hip and her foot. She will then reach posterior-medially 3 times while her knee comes a little bit various in relation to her hip and her foot. She will then reach posterior-laterally 3 times with her knee coming a little bit varus each time. Joy will reach anteriorly 3 times while trying to keep her right knee in line with her hip and her foot. She will then reach posterior-medially 3 times with her right knee coming a little bit valgus each time. She will then reach posterior laterally 3 times with her knee coming a little bit valgus each time. Flexion, Joy scored the same in her right ankle for both tests, scoring 6 centimeters in the level 1. For her left ankle, however, she scored 8 centimeters during her active test and scored 5 centimeters during her passive test. Which makes no sense just because the active test is limited by the passive test. And I think that during the testing, she lifted her heel a little bit during her left active to get a little bit more distance. For hip flexion, the passive tests had a lot greater measurements than the active tests. In her right active, she scored her ankle was 10 centimeters from her mid-thigh. And in the right passive, her ankle was 13 centimeters from her mid-thigh. And for the left active, her ankle was 7 centimeters from the mid-thigh. And in the left passive, her ankle was 10 centimeters from her mid-thigh. For shoulder flexion, there weren't much differences either. For her right shoulder, she scored 3 centimeters from her C7 at a level 2. And for her right passive, she scored 4 centimeters and was a level 2. So only 1 centimeter difference. And in her left active, she scored 4 centimeters and was at a level 2. And her left passive, she scored a 6 centimeter and level 2. So only a 2 centimeter difference. Shoulder and hip mobility weren't really a factor in influencing the Y-balance test just because you're not flexing your hip or your shoulder. However, ankle dorsiflexion was an influencer. I think that in Joy's right leg, she scored 217 as a composite score, and in her left leg, she scored 214 as a composite score. And that can be attributed to her right passive ankle dorsiflexion, where she scored 6 centimeters, and in her left passive ankle dorsiflexion, she scored 5 centimeters. So having that centimeter difference in ankle mobility really helped her reach farther in her right. Georgia would benefit a lot from the hip mobility test just because she is 73 and got a new hip replacement, and so that would help her increase her range of motion in her hip, which would help her with daily functions such as walking up the stairs or getting out of bed.